Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks so much. Thank goodness, right? Yeah, we're super excited to be here today to talk about Journey. Not only a bit about our personal journey, our career journey, but a little bit about the journeys that we document and capture with those that we work with. So hopefully some of what we're sharing today resonates with you all and where you're at in your own journey. So to start, a little bit about Seven Pair. We are, as Sophia said, a film and photography studio. We're located in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, but we used to live up in Boston. We travel throughout the Northeast working with organizations and institutions. We're really lucky that we get to work with a lot of amazing people doing amazing things. So anywhere from healthcare to education, outdoor recreation and accessibility, elder isolation. We get to come into different community spaces and really hear their stories, and we're so grateful that they allow us to come in and kind of follow them around with a camera. So
yeah, and with that, a lot of the stuff we're doing is with real people and talking about being grateful for them sharing their stories with us, right? In terms of journey, right, we're having these conversations that sometimes a journey can be a little bit more vulnerable, and we always try to remain appreciative of those moments that people are willing to share with us. And when we're working with real people, we kind of have to take this approach of camera and equipment second. We kind of recognize like these are not actors or models. We want people to have a comfortable experience when they're willing to share their stories with us. And that's kind of our primary goal, is to create the opportunity for them to share their story in the most authentic and genuine way possible. Because our job is really to take their lead on what their story is and shape that and help tell that in a way for other people to understand and relate to it.
yeah, we try to just come into every project as we're just here to translate their stories, their journeys into a visual medium. They know what they want to share. They know their messaging best. We're just here to listen and elevate those voices in a way that makes sense for them.
Yeah, because just one more touch point on that was essentially as we kind of tell the stories. Actually, you were saying something a second ago.
Well, so I don't know if you want to pull those samples. So visual people, we brought some samples. So here's some of the communities that we've worked with, which we've thoroughly enjoyed, and then actually coming up, we have a couple video samples. So the first one is with Vermont Adaptive Skiing Sport. We had done a series of videos with them in Vermont Tourism, talking about accessibility throughout the state of Vermont and the value of that and the importance of it. So the little video clip we have is actually with two of our friends. So we hope you enjoy, and figured it would just be a way to give you a flavor for the type of stories that we tell.
It truly is just the best thing to be out there on the snow. And for me with a disability, it's access to being part of the world that we live in. Vermont Adaptive has a community that is very unique. They have the equipment and the people to break down the limitation, and then everyone can get outside. Without them, I wouldn't be skiing with my husband.
I just love to be outside, but also to have awesome places to eat. And even after skiing an entire day, I just still feel relaxed. It's this is our time. We get to go out, do some things together. And that's why we're here.
The valley's just home.
So yeah, just a short little piece, and like we said, that was with our friends Em and Eric, which made the day really fun. But with that particular project, when we were working with Vermont Adaptive, just a little insight to our approach. They mentioned that they want to showcase, the accessible areas across the state, from lodging to dining, but specifically outdoor recreation. And what we did was work with them to find community members within their own community that'd be willing to share their stories. We find working with real people and having those who are willing to share their stories, a lot of the time that makes the impact greater in some ways, rather than hiring talent. Obviously, there's a time and a place for that. But in this particular instance, we were able to just follow them on a hill that they enjoy doing themselves. So.
And just one more note is, this piece could have been just listing off all the different places you can go and visit, but we really try to get to the why behind the story and the impact of it, which is why you hear a little bit more of the personal impact from that story. And that's kind of one of the goals with whatever the general approach is. We still try to tuck in the why behind it. And so we just had one more real quick we wanted to share with you guys. This was actually for a capital campaign for a boarding school in Connecticut. But even when you're trying to appeal to donors and there's a little more of that kind of initiative, there's still ways to help tell stories. And so we focused on a handful of different individual students and kind of exploring their journey and how their educational experience impacted kind of their goals and future. So just one short one from there.
I think the diversity of resources is really important as a student because it provides that environment for you to explore, dive deeper into things that you're passionate about, but also, look wider. What's really cool about engineering to me is that it really gives you the ability to build something new, build something that can impact members in the community, addressing maybe problems in society. So specifically what I was working on was building a prosthetic to support a friend of mine that can attach to her arm and allow her to hold a cello bow so that she can play the cello. For people my age, we're still exploring, we're still trying new things, trying to see what we're passionate about and what we want to do in the future. And having that supportive community, I think, has really personally empowered me to take initiative.
So those are just a couple of quick samples. We don't want to play too many videos for you guys because we want to chat and have more of a conversation with you all. But as you can see, we spent a lot of time. It's more testimonial-based kind of storytelling and getting people's journeys out there. So when we were thinking about also sharing with you guys about our journey, we kind of took a moment and paused to each other and kind of laughed because we realized we spent a lot of time helping other people tell the stories. We don't really spend much time looking back on our own story. How did we get here? Why? And what kind of led us to that point? So this has been a really fun exploration that we're excited to share a little bit more. So we're going to go back in time for a second with you guys.
So here we are.
Adorable, right? She is.
This was, I think this was sophomore year, and then when we graduated UConn, as Sophia mentioned, we met at UConn as undergrads. Friends first, started dating junior year. For Eric, he was always, still is, such an easy person to hang out with, get along with, and I distinctly remember some of my first memories with him, and this continues to this day. I would walk into his dorm and he'd be editing ski videos. Always something ski related, editing videos, all that going on. But it's interesting because that right there has led to where he is now. So I'll let him kind of share some of his journey in that way.
It is true. I was doing a little bit of homework, but mostly that. So throughout high school and college, and I know a couple times I've shared a couple of little ski videos with the community here. That is something I love doing. But during that period of my life, I was also filming that and making movies with friends, which kind of kept snowballing a little bigger and bigger each year. We were actually making movies and selling them. Back on DVDs when DVDs were a thing. And so that's something What's a DVD? I don't know what it stands for. Actually, it's disc in there somewhere, right? We do that, and as I was kind of making those films, that was a passion of mine. I was also studying communications and marketing, and when we're talking about why did I pick that major, I think at the time coming in, I really had no idea what I wanted to do, but I kind of knew what I didn't want to do. And looking back, realizing that's almost as important as knowing what you want to do to help kind of guide you in that path. And so I kind of just followed this route, what kind of felt something natural to me or interesting. But when I graduated, I still had no idea what I wanted to do. I was still making movies and filming, and I knew that was a passion of mine. I kind of stuck with that. But through a friend of mine who was in a lot of the ski movies I did, he connected me with a mutual family friend of his who ran a production company back in Connecticut, running his own business, doing photography and video for a lot of similar clients to what we do today. And they connected me, and I was able to get my first job there as a video editor. But it was funny because, I think just through the power of word of mouth and people kind of knowing what you're passionate about, enjoy doing, sometimes can kind of open a door that you may not even know existed. So it was quite a nice surprise and really kind of started me on my path.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines, my journey's been a little, not as linear, I guess. Went into UConn looking to do education, but actually fell in love with human development and family studies when I was there. I just loved human interactions and patterns and systems of everyone working together, and there was just such a broad range of ways or career paths you could go into from that major. When I was approaching graduation, I was still uncertain similarly, but someone had come into a class to speak about marriage and family therapy, which was a branch of human development family studies. So I entered the grad program at UConn for marriage and family therapy. The reason that intrigued me so much was about the family systems piece, but for me, I want to focus on working with families who are dealing with grief and loss, specifically cancer-related loss. I had lost my mom when I was younger to ovarian cancer, so I think in my mind, I want to be able to work with families and kind of help them through that piece of their journey that was difficult, and kind of have that skill set to support them in that way. So entered the program as a 2-year program, and about a year into my program, my dad died from an enlarged heart. So I kind of realized at that point I needed to pivot, and we use pivot a lot for other reasons down our journey line, but I realized if I couldn't support people in the best way that I could if I still had stuff to work on with grief and loss. So I still was able to take that skill set. We ended up in Boston. So I actually worked as a financial aid advisor at BU, kind of using that skill set, building rapport with the students who came in, a little less vulnerable, talking about financial aid versus grief and loss. So that helped in that way. But I think for me at that time, I realized there was something missing still. I want to have a little bit more of an impact. I want to do something that brought me a little bit of joy, trying to find joy in my life at that time. So since I was working at BU, as an employee, you could go to grad school. So I entered the arts administration program, and through that program, it was the best thing ever. I loved art. I did dance and theater growing up, so that was the initial interest, but through one of the classes, I was able to explore my passions. So they really had you kind of think about, well, what are some of your passions and how can those passions make an impact on those around you? So as a result, I was like, oh, I guess I am passionate about storytelling. You know, even with marriage and family therapy, the fact that people would come in their most vulnerable states and talk with you and feel comfortable sharing those stories, that's something I appreciated. But I want to do something where maybe there's a way to preserve those stories. You know, I'm the keeper of my family stories. My brother always jokes I have boxes of family photographs, and he's like, I don't want these. But with the arts admin program, I was like, oh, well, maybe I can help other families preserve those legacies, specifically for family members who are a little older or who are sick, you know, preserving those memories before that person's no longer there. So that's kind of how I got into film and photography, was just from that passion, and really listening to that to myself at the time, which I didn't anticipate. So from there, in order to kind of build up my career in photography, you know, I was always taking photos for fun, but had a lot of learning to do. So I got an internship with a photographer in the city, worked with her, and from there I was able to learn a lot about running a small business, building up those skills, how do you approach clients, kind of all those details. And that on the side, I was also starting to work with Eric and his former boss on video projects and you know, some of those, which you can speak a little more to as well.
And you know, actually, Nicole talked about her passion for capturing memories and stuff like that. I mean, all of these photos I have from college and beyond, these are all photos that she took the time to take. So there's definitely always something there, and obviously very grateful to have that. So, you know, during that entire experience of Nicole kind of navigating different career paths, but all kind of winding through, I was still at the same job. So my like I said, I kind of kept a pretty straight track. I could keep things kind of simple overall, but you know, thinking about why was that, right? I was very fortunate during that period of time to have an amazing mentor and boss. Learned so much from him along the ways, and each kind of year would kind of grow in my skill level and responsibilities. But I also got to see how someone ran a business, but also did similar storytelling and approached stories with empathy and care and passion, working with a lot of people in similar kind of fields. And getting to witness that was really impactful for me to learn from. And then also, you know, once again, kind of how I was in college, I kind of just took each day at a time. I didn't really think too much. What was my 1 year, 5 year plan? I kind of just wake up and say, I'm really excited for today. I'm excited to learn something new. I loved meeting new people, learning about their stories, helping them tell that. So I never really thought too much beyond what was coming next. Just kind of, as long as I felt like I was learning and growing each day, I wasn't too concerned what the next step was. And I felt very fortunate to partially fall into place, but it was a general passion to begin with. And kind of as I was progressing along, I think it was kind of nearing towards the pandemic. My boss was kind of contemplating some form of retirement, and Nicole was starting to work more with us. And when kind of pandemic hit and retirement kind of happened all kind of around the same time, Nicole kind of brought up this idea because, I said, well, I don't really want to go work for another company. And she was starting to really mesh into the field a lot. I said, do we want to make this a thing, more official? And we'd already gotten married, so that was pretty official. But I said, let's form an LLC together too.
Yay!
And that's
it was good. And that kind of leads into our journeys combined in some ways. So, in a lot of ways, I should say.
And actually, real quick, if you don't mind, was the other aspect of that was I realized during that time we're getting closer to merging. I come home a lot, share all these stories of people I was meeting, stories we were telling, and realizing how much was intertwined with her personal interest, her experiences personally and professionally. And I always be like, I wish you were here and could have met these people today. It would have really, meant a lot, I think, for you to meet these people, but also I think you would have been able to create impact for them too. And so it became a very interesting merging of personal and professional that wasn't intentional by any means, but.
Yeah, it's super interesting. We're always, we'll come out of the office at our house and be like, is this real life? Or who's allowing us to do this? So we're super grateful that this even happened. Working with your spouse, it's been an exciting journey. Previously he'd come home or I'd come home, we'd say, oh, how was your day? Oh, I did this, that, the other thing, but now we're together and we get to travel to different spots throughout, the Northeast working on projects. Not to say there hasn't been growing pains, trying to figure out, I think for us a big piece of our journey has been figuring out how to still dedicate time not only to our business and each other as business partners, but then also to each other as a couple. So okay, 6 o'clock, let's cut off work. No more work talk the rest of the night, even though it could be difficult, but yeah.
Yeah, other things too, thinking about, people always ask, how the heck do you work with your spouse? And I kind of take it back a step where I'm like, well, you choose your friends, which we did in college, and then, you're choosing your spouse every single day you want to be together. And then we just took the next step and we chose each other as partners for our business. No one forced us to do any of this. So we kind of actively have that in our mind of let's work on this together because we both want this and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's great in the sense too, because I feel like we get to see a different side of each other in a professional manner, but then also see each other grow in a lot of ways. Eric's been in the field so long, kind of doing what we're doing, but then it's been interesting, kind of coming in and supporting that in different ways that I didn't even anticipate for myself. So, with the different roles we've come up with and kind of what we focus on. But then also how we approach projects and talk about, well, these are the types of clients we want to work with. These are the types of stories we want to tell and elevate.
Yeah, and it kind of has also just expanded the depth of our conversations amongst each other, having those higher level conversations that you really get to learn once again about the other person, how they think. I always joke, to be honest, I know at home I might be a little more kind of laid back and I'll fold the laundry tomorrow and I'll get to that. But at home I'm like, that cable's not, or at work I'm like, that cable's not coiled correctly. I gotta go fix that right now. And she's like, whoa, who is this person?
Yeah, that's been fun. So yeah, kind of in reflecting upon our journeys in general, I think key takeaways, we're trying to think of okay, how do we talk about what we've learned or key takeaways, and I think we've realized that every part of the journey, there's no wasted part of your journey. If you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like there was challenging moments, all of it matters. Those moments of joy, the challenges, the moments where you learned something new, where you said, oh, I shouldn't have done that, all of that brings you to where you are. At least in our cases, it's made a huge impact on how I approach life, how I approach my business, how we approach each other. So I think that's been a big piece that we always say, try to say no regrets, right? So.
Yeah, and when we talk to you about journeys and stories, sometimes it can be kind of viewed as just a sequence of events. This happened, then that happened, then that happened. But really, with work, but also personally, it's really about trying to find the in-between and the why of why each step happened and occurred. whether it was active decision or something happened to you, how did you react to that and why? I have no thought on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, even with the loss that I experienced in my life, I'm grateful in the way that I feel like I'm able to work with others and, help them preserve their stories. So whether it's, stories of communities and the impact that they're creating, or individuals and families and their experiences of what they've gone through, it's something I never realized I'd be doing, having conversations and interviews and, taking photographs of those moments. So yeah, it's been super cool in that way.
And then, on that more linear side of the path, is kind of just a little bit following the gut sometimes, and what you're passionate about, and exploring what you may or may not be passionate about can really be a big part of that journey, and kind of just sticking with it. And then when it's not working for you, if you're able to, change it up, or do something else on the side to explore and see if that brings you a different path.
Yeah, we, with a lot of our friends, we kind of have these discussions, or for friends that are like, I know I want to make a change, but I don't know how to do it or where to start. We, at least for us in our journeys, we always say, find things that bring you joy and explore that, because you never know the people you're going to meet, you never know opportunities that will come up from just interacting within that space. And then along those lines as well, taking risks. I grew up being told, which totally makes sense, find a full-time job with benefits, you stick with it, that's it. But there's other ways to do that. And that's something it took me a while to realize, but I ended up quitting my full-time job and exploring photography, something that I had no experience in, professionally yet. But it actually did make sense in a lot of ways, some of the experiences I had from other careers and in life. So you never know, and why not give it a go? We only have, one chance with this life, so might as well try.
And I think one of the last notes too was interesting. We reflected on starting the business around 2020 was just an interesting story. Was and talking about kind of navigating that path was we technically founded the business in February of 2020, and then we flipped the open sign, and then in March of 2020 we kind of flipped that closed sign for a minute. What we were used to doing was telling stories for people, going into their homes, going into hospitals, and everything in between. And we had, like many of us, right, everything kind of completely changed. And the word was pivot, right, where we had to figure out how do we continue telling these stories. And that was an interesting start to our business, because we thought we knew exactly what we were going to start off doing and had to change that up. But we found ways to continue finding methods to help tell those stories of individuals, which was just a fun challenge to start off.
It definitely was, and I think in that way, that part of the journey has impacted us to know that there are highs and lows, and you got to ride that through and support each other as best you can. And it will be okay. Like, even if there's some lows, there's ways to pivot. There's support systems out there. There's people you can talk to. So I think for me, I kind of like knowing what's coming up next and understanding that. So I think that was a good experience at the beginning, to kind of anticipate that that's part of this industry. And, even with the lows, the highs are worth it too.
Yeah, and we're all learning as we go, and kind of using, once again, looking back and reflecting on the journey, we realize it can be really helpful for helping inform where you came from, where you are today, and where you might want to go next. And kind of constantly reflecting on those moments has been really helpful for us, and kind of guiding to moving forward. But we're very grateful to be able to do this together, enjoy all those moments. So
I'm grateful that we're here, so thanks for listening.